Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Clause YouTube channel Strategic Frontlines. Today, we have a very powerful panel, and we are going to discuss the takeaways from SCO as also the India-China relation. So first, let me welcome Ambassador Ashok Kantha, who was a former Indian ambassador to China, as also High Commission to Sri Lanka and Malaysia. And he was a former director of Institute of Chinese Studies. Accompanying him are Lieutenant General Dr. S.L. Narasimhan, PVSM, AVSM and BAR, VSM retired. He was a former member of India's National Security Advisory Board and first Director General at the Center for Contemporary China Studies. Please also welcome Professor S. Kondapalli. He's the professor in Chinese Studies at JNU. He is the author of two books, China's Military, the PLA in Transition, and China's Naval Power. And he has also written a number of monographs. I welcome all of you to this podcast. As we know that PM Modi, after many years, has visited China to attend the SCO summit at Tianjin, the optics has been extremely positive and range from shifting global order to the TRICO building a new global order. The camaraderie of President Putin and Prime Minister Modi, and later on with President Xi in video, signals a subtle change. However, along with these positive outcomes, there are also debates as to how successful the China-India relationship after the thaw will remain. So in the first round of questions, we'll try to dwell on the positives. And in the second, we'll try to see the challenges. So coming to SCO's outcome, we know that the Prime Minister stated that the SCO is based on three pillars, that is security, connectivity, and opportunity. To know more about it, I would first like to call Ambassador Kantha, and I'd like to ask him, what are the major takeaways from the SCO? And geopolitically, what is the significance of this trio? And do you feel this rig is sustainable, or is it just a knee-jerk reaction to counter Trump? Your initial remarks, please.
SCO is one organization which has been growing, and likewise, our involvement has also become more substantive. You'll recall that we joined SCO as full member in 2017. And we wanted to be there for a number of reasons, including, in keeping with a policy of strategic autonomy, recognition of the fact that there was consolidation of Eurasian landmass, which is very important for us. And SCO is a major organization for that region. And also, by being inside the tent, we wanted to shape outcomes in SCO and also engage with Central Asian republics in particular. Now, coming to the SCO summit at Tianjin, clearly, Chinese wanted to put on a big show. This was by far the largest SCO summit with participation of 20 heads of state and government and 10 international organizations. China wanted to display its convening power, especially amidst current global uncertainty. It wanted to project itself as a factor of stability, as a global power at a time when USA is, sending out discordant signals in second Trump administration. It succeeded to a considerable extent in doing that. From our perspective, Prime Minister visited Tianjin to attend the SCO summit. It was, part of, our involvement with SEO. We wanted to signal that we remain an active member of the organization, and also, SEO as a platform where we could interact with, for instance, President Xi Jinping of China, President Vladimir Putin of Russia, and apart from summit itself, the bilateral engagements became very important. And we did get some, concrete, sort of gains from the meeting. From our perspective, getting a strong language on terrorism was important, especially against the backdrop of what happened in Pahalgam, and Pakistan also being a member of SEO. So we have a fairly strong language on terrorism, with the very categorical condemnation of terrorist outrage in Pahalgam, and the reiteration of fact that there cannot be sort of double standards on terrorism, though of course it's balanced to some extent by a reference to what has happened in Pakistan as well. Prime Minister also came up with some initiatives like global a dialogue on civilization. We have responded positively to suggestions like moving ahead with the proposal on SEO Development Bank, which has been pipelined for quite some time. Our preference being, positioning SEO as an organization which focuses on functional cooperation, terrorism, and increasingly economic matters, rather than becoming an instrument in geopolitical contestation. And we carefully avoided that, though China, of course, would like to use it in such a manner. So, limiting my comments here only to SEO, I'll say that we could achieve objectives we have set for ourselves.
I'd like to bring in Professor Kondapalli. There's Ambassador Kantha pointed out about the SEO bank. So I would like to ask you two questions. Firstly, Prime Minister Modi, before going to China, he went to Japan. So is there a subtle signal there? And the SEO bank, do you think it will be trying to legitimize the BRI? Because most of the funding may go to that. And even when President Xi talked about the global governance initiative. So, what do you make of all these things? So, your initial comments on geopolitics, how it is going to plan in the near future.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roshan Khanijo, for the invite and the clause. I wanted to say that the Prime Minister's visit to Japan was very productive. There is the expected transfer of the R&D and others of the Shinkansen, the high-speed railway project, to India, which is a quantum jump in the Indian railway development, if I may say so, because this would be a very high-tech, and it has a zero accident rate and proven for several decades. And this is a major, I think, outcome of Prime Minister's visit to Tokyo. But they also have suggested that they will invest about $65 billion in India. And when many countries have not invested in India, the SEO countries specifically. So this is a very good signal for India in terms of the outcome of the visit to Tokyo. And there is, of course, the balancing act that is visible, because India now today is also learning from China in terms of balancing the other. Every Chinese president, prime minister, when he visited New Delhi, they also landed in Islamabad, and recently Wang Yi, the foreign minister, also landed in Kabul. Um, and I must take you back to the visits by Chiang Zemin in '96. He visited Delhi, and then he addressed the Pakistani Senate. And Wen Xiaopao visited Dhaka and then Delhi. Then also Xi Jinping visited Sri Lanka, Maldives, and then Delhi in 2014. the last visit by the Chinese president. Hu Jintao also came to Delhi in 2006, but went to Islamabad. So there is the Chinese practice of balancing India with other South Asian countries, which is visible for over last 3 decades. And so I think India is now learning from China how to balance the other. Prime Minister Modi, when he went to Beijing, he went to Mongolia. And the visit to South Korea was also in that context. So I think we are learning from the Chinese, which is good thing because here in this case, while China may receive terrorists from Pakistan, by the way, there are 36 Chinese killed in Pakistan, not one single Chinese in India so far. So when a Chinese leader visits Islamabad, they get the terrorists. But an Indian prime minister visiting Tokyo, we get high technology and you know uh, improvement in terms of our comprehensive national power. So I think this is a balancing act, but more productive than compared with the Chinese visits to other South Asian countries. You mentioned SEO Development Bank, whether it has any implications for the BRI. Um, like the BRICS New Development Bank, there is a suggestion for this. For last 2 or 3 years, SEO Development Bank proposal was there. And this is to also learn from the NDB Development Bank that China is proposing. It now wants to have complete control over the SEO Development Bank. Unlike the BRICS New Development Bank, which was proposed by Dr. Manmohan Singh long ago and fructified in the Fortaleza meeting of the BRICS, and then finally came out. But the new development bank of the BRICS is under the 5 countries. And today, the president is from Brazil, previously from India, the ICICI Bank former director, former chief. Uh, so the SEO Development Bank would be mainly by Chinese, under the Chinese leadership. So we see that President Xi Jinping announced the $240 million
Yes.
assistance to any country that could avail the SEO Development Bank funding. So the initial comments were made by President Xi at the summit. So this indicates that possibly it will come under the Chinese leadership, unlike the new development bank of the BRICS. We do not know yet because there is no concrete proposal or actual institution of the development bank of the SEO, but this is one view which could be probably. But I also want to come on the outcomes of the meeting so far. I think um, one of the most significant outcomes is the photo ops. In the
Yes.
background of the tariffs, the hand in hand with President Putin and the trilateral impromptu meeting of the 3 leaders of China, India, and Russia. I think that has sent a lot of shockwaves across from a photo optic point of view. So that is one major outcome. Secondly, I think the Prime Minister made very clear about the sovereignty and territorial integrity related matters. And in the background of the Galwan incident, I think these were very appropriate. He mentioned about peace and stability, and he mentioned about terrorism, he also mentioned that these are part of the SEO charter. So, in other words, he was trying to tell the audience you cannot have double standards uh, in the SEO. I think that was a very significant outcome in the sense of influencing the perceptions of the other member states and observer states and partners. There is also the mention about stability in bilateral relations with China. Uh, uh, I mean, for the last 9 months, there were a number of activities. So this is in line with that um, visits and recently by Foreign Minister Wang Yi. So we can say that Prime Minister was striving for stability in the border areas. Um, so this would be a major step because this is after 7 years that he is visiting China. So I think there was that factor, stability in bilateral relations. Because after Galwan, we shut down 30 dialogue processes with China. So I think
Yes.
that was.
Yes. So here I would like to bring in General Narasimhan. We were talking about Galwan. So a lot has happened after Galwan. A lot of positive things have happened. There have been progress as disengagement in certain regions has taken place. There have been some agreements also. So first, I want to ask you two questions. Firstly, your initial remarks about SEO and the geopolitics, whatever you want to talk about it. And secondly, your assessment of current and future contours of the India-China border issues.
Okay, let me thank you for getting me onto this podcast with this elite panel. I want to mention about there are 6 points regarding security in that particular declaration that came out. I'll just cover them in brief, and then I'll also talk about the global governance initiative, which Xi Jinping proposed, which has actually got very little attention in the media and others. But I think that is an important aspect I think we need to keep in mind. So the 6 points basically on the security related issues are, one is they talked about the three evils, that is terrorism, separatism and extremism. This is typically a Chinese language. They call it three evils and they mention these three things. And so that is found a place in the declaration. Second, there has been some effort on the terrorism, which Ambassador Kantha as well as Professor Kondapalli brought out. Third is a threat to security and a security anti-drug center. So this is something that has been proposed, which is a new thing that has come up as far as security is concerned. And Afghanistan found a mention for a change, that brought in to say that, it should have a inclusive kind of governance, etc. Then they also had a global missile defense system. I mean, on the global missile defense system, there was a point to say that that is becoming more of a threat. And of course, there was also a mention of, the outer space. They wanted outer space to be free of weapons, and also they wanted a binding document to be signed on non-militarization of space, not placing weapons in space. These are the 6 points I think that came up as far as security-related issues are concerned. I think basically if you group them, one is of course the terrorism and the drugs. That is one aspect of it. Second is of course Afghanistan. Third is of course the missile defense system and the weaponization of outer space. These are the things that I think they were covered in that particular document. In addition to that, when Mr. Xi Jinping mentioned about global governance initiative, I think we need to see this as a continuation of the global initiatives that they have been launching, starting from September 2020 with the Global Initiative on Data Security. In between, in 2023, they also announced a proposal for reform and development of global governance. And now they have come out with a global governance initiative. Basically, Mr. Xi Jinping highlighted 5 principles. One is adhering to sovereign equality, abiding by international rule of law, practicing multilateralism, advocating the people-centered approach, and focusing on taking real actions. These are the 5 points I think he mentioned as far as global governance initiative is concerned. I think we need to see this in continuation of the global initiatives which they have been proposing, all of them culminating into the global civilization GSCM. That is that initiative, the last initiative that came up. So that I think all of them lead into that particular thing. So this is something I think we need to keep it as a overall feature of this global initiative that have come up over a period of time starting from September 2020. There are 7, 8, 9 of them have come up at regular intervals. Civilization for shared future. Sorry, my mistake. Global civilization for shared future is what that sentence I was trying to get.
I'd like to bring in Ambassador Kantha here. A lot have been talked about this visit and the CBMs, like it's a kind of a confidence building measures, and they help in stabilizing the relations. But do you really think that the Chinese capabilities or intent to course will change? For example, China's close military and economic collaboration with Pakistan, will it remain intact, or there will be some changes in it? As also, it's Indo-Pacific and other expansionist salami slicing strategies. So, how do you feel that this reset should progress? Both, firstly, globally, because India is seen as the largest democracy and rooted in pluralism. And secondly, domestically, how we should deal with it. Should we go in a transactional format or a conditional format, or how the research should go forward? Your views.
Well, Roshan, I would like to highlight a couple of points here. Uh, One, in terms of larger positioning or recalibration of our diplomatic stance. We are in midst of a very difficult situation, and in this situation, we are keen to see that there is a degree of stability in our relations with China, even while we take care of problem areas you referred to. We wanted to convey also very clearly that when it comes to our strategic partnership with Russia, that will not be influenced by pressures we are subjected to by USA and less extent by European Union as well. And I think that also was conveyed clearly, through Prime Minister's meeting with President Putin. The fact that they took the ride, this what Prof. Kondapalli talked about, the visual which went viral, Prime Minister Modi, President Xi, and President Putin being together, smiling, though it's not that it was deliberately orchestrated or choreographed movement, but it served its purpose in conveying certain message. So this is one. Related to this is what Prime Minister told President Xi in context of India-China relations, that we should not look at this relationship through third country lens. This was an important message to China, because they tend to look at India through prism of their strategic contestation with USA. They tend to sort of underestimate India's strategic autonomy and agency. So, Prime Minister, emphasized the aspect of strategic autonomy. So, message was that, look here, we are trying to improve relations with China. It's a process which commenced, in fact, in Kazan, Russia, in October last year, when Prime Minister met with President Xi, and it has gained some momentum. In fact, both leaders made positive assessment of progress which has been made since 23rd October 2024, when they had last met. So this is happening, but this is not in response to difficulties we have currently with the USA, because there is, uh, group of people, commentators, who suggest that it's kind of a rebound on our part. That we have faced difficulties with USA, so we are moving closer to China. Mature nations don't quite behave like that. I don't think that were objective. I don't see any strategic realignment taking place today involving India, China, and Russia, especially India and China, given fact that we have serious problems in our relations with China. You referred to some of those issues. Indeed, China remains our primary strategic challenge. So, question of making common cause with China to sort of compensate with any strategic deficit, we may have with USA at this point of time, frankly, is not a viable proposition. So this is the larger framework. So this whole idea of troika coming up, RIC platform may be resurrected, but RIC has never been an effective platform. I've been part of that at both track 1, track 2 level. It has not really, yielded any substantive outcomes. That's one. Second point is that in our relations with China, there is a clear effort to calibrate, move in a step-by-step manner. So this time we focused, apart from people-centric contacts. Now we are also exploring more economic engagement, though we'll be well advised to put in place safeguards, also take care of economic security, and in parallel, we are trying to see that the border issue gets attention, something which China seeks to sort of downplay. This time also, she said that we should not sort of overemphasize the border issue in India-China relations. We had certain decisions taken during Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit to India recently, including on de-escalation of troops, which has moved, uh, early harvest in certain sectors. I have my reservations about idea of early harvest because no, when China had proposed it earlier, it was limited to Sikkim sector, and we had not accepted it for good reasons. I don't know what is going to be the scope of early harvest this time. De-escalation is desirable as long as we factor in considerations like nature of terrain, border infrastructure, and time taken to induct and de-induct troops, something which Chinese had accepted earlier as part of 1996 agreement on military CBMs. So we are moving ahead in a carefully calibrated manner. It should remain like that. In parallel, we need to keep addressing outstanding issues, including what we referred to Chinese behavior during Sindoor when they provided expensive support to Pakistan. This mega dam they are setting up in our immediate vicinity. Economic coercion we were subjected to recently when they denied certain critical exports to India, and range of other issues, and the broader geopolitical divergence between the countries. They talk about multipolarity at global level. We talk about both global multipolarity and multipolarity in Asia. They're not interested in multipolarity in Asia. So it will be a difficult process. We need to persevere, keeping in mind the objective of putting India-China relations on a footing of stability, predictability, and constructive engagement, as Prime Minister told Wang Yi during his call on him a few days ago.
Uh, Mr. Kantha, you rightly pointed out there has to be a constructive and calibrated approach, which we need to do because there are outstanding issues. I would like to bring in Professor Kondapalli. From Mr. Kantha talked about economic security. Now, there is the economic reset where Beijing has lifted certain export restrictions. But India's trade deficit has been very high. It's now 99.2 billion. So there is a view that Chinese, if they're easing the curves, is basically making our dependencies becoming a leverage point for them. Especially our supply chains will get exposed. For example, if you see 70% of our bulk drug ingredients as also batteries we continue to rely on China. So what is the way forward? We need to protect as well as we need to harness the technology and take good things what China is offering to us and not get entangled in this net. So what is the way forward?
Thank you very much. I think the meeting here was basically the SEO, and bilateral meeting was just about 50 minutes between the two sides, and much of that has been, as we discussed, about sovereignty, territorial integrity, and terrorism related matters. I'm sure this will be raised later on at the bilateral meetings, structured bilateral meetings in future. Already this is being discussed, and there was a mention during Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit on this issue, as well as the Indian side also mentioned. Three things that came about. One is that tunnel boring machines, which China had banned. Secondly, the rare earth metals for the electronics and automobile industry. This is also, they suggested they will lift the ban, informal ban that they imposed on these. And also in terms of the various restrictions they have been posing on the Chinese technicians, engineers in India, such as, for example, in the Foxconn, they've asked them to return to China. So these would be discussed in the structured meetings in the future. So what we saw is, as Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri mentioned, we began with this process just about 9 months ago, and things would be discussed at a more structured level on all of the issues that impact on the bilateral relations, including in the economic relations. You're right that the Indian side had raised the issue of trade deficit. And there is the cumulative trade deficit that India has for the last 15, 20 years, roughly about $1.4 trillion in favor of China. So this is one that is really pinching India because it is translating also into current account deficits. And hence there is an urgent necessity. Long ago, 15 years ago, India raised this issue of trade deficits. China promised to address this issue by importing more from India. And during the informal summit meetings between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping, this issue has also been raised, and they began importing from the Indian side, but very marginally. For example, non-basmati rice that was mentioned in the Wuhan informal summit meeting and other areas in 2018. And the Chinese investments to be also scaled up. But as of now, just about $8 billion in the last 2 decades of Chinese investment in India. While India is losing a lot in terms of the trade deficits, the investment from China has not really picked up. I mean, after Galwan, there were some Indian restrictions, but it is actually traced back to even before Galwan. The press note 3 has not been withdrawn yet. I think the concern is about the hostile takeovers by the Chinese companies, like the HDFC Bank incident indicated. So, but recently the economic survey mentioned about the investments from China, and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also alluded to the investments from China in a recent interview to the Times of India. So we would expect these to be the second aspect, that is investments from China to be to improve further in the future. There is a talk about 24% stakes or so given to the Chinese companies, but this is still in the discussion stage. Third measure that they suggested for the trade deficits to be reduced is exporting to a third market, but that has not really taken off once again. So there are some suggestions like this, but overall, at the moment in Tianjin, these were not discussed because the time span was just about 50 minutes in the bilateral. So this will be taken up in future engagements between the two sides.
Jal Narasimhan, I would like to bring you in here, and I would like to ask you firstly your comments on the geopolitics, how it is progressing, especially the BRIC. What are your views on it? And secondly, if we see our goal is to become Atmanirbhar Bharat, especially to become independent as far as the defense is concerned. For that, what is required is a peaceful borders we require. So, for if we see that kind of a thing, then it is very essential that we build a stability in our borders, especially with China, and we build up our relationship. But there are, on the other side, there are views that a lot of satellite imageries state that the PLA bases in Tibet are hardening. There is logistic hubs which are coming up, new helipads and infrastructure is coming up. So, do you see a change in the intent of China? And because their capabilities keep growing, and it will keep that way. As far as the arms delivery to Pakistan is concerned, it will continue. So, according to you, what should be our strategy? How should we move forward?
Firstly, my apologies. I didn't answer that boundary question in my first intervention. Master Kant partially covered it in his remarks. Actually, during the special representative talks, the thing that came up, there was some dichotomy in the statement that came up between China and India. And of course, if you now go and see the updated version, that is a different issue that see in the Chinese readout. The point that we need to get to see in the boundary issue is we were talking about delimitation of boundary. China at that point in time, the initial remark, they talked about demarcation. There is seems to be some kind of a difference in the view, in the way this is viewed both by China and India at that point in time. That is point number one. Point number two, early harvest, Ambassador Kant covered it well. About Sikkim, Chinese seems to have been looking at Sikkim, but we have been saying something more, middle sector and Sikkim or something like that. But we'll have to wait and see. This is only an expert group that is going to be nominated now, and they have to sit and work first themselves and thereafter with the Chinese side to get to a conclusion. So we should not get ourselves ahead of the situation at this point in time. It is going to take time, effort, all of it. I'm sure Ambassador Khan knows the difficulties of working in a JWG, which was there earlier, joint working group that was there earlier, and the expert group that was also existing earlier. So that is something I think we need to wait and watch, and so we need to do that. The second thing is on the geopolitics part of it, as far as the SCO meeting is concerned. I think the whole world was trying to focus on 3 leaders out of those 26 leaders who were sitting in that dais. And actually, Prime Minister Modi, Mr. Xi Jinping, and Mr. Putin, the 3 of them, for a short period of time, standing and discussing, I think got the most attention in the entire world as far as this entire meetings are concerned. But my own understanding is this is a limited kind of a thing. I don't think SCO can become a kind of a block that they are talking about, the Eastern Bloc and things like that. I don't think that is in the offing at any point in time. And I'm not sure that I'm also very sure that we'll not be wanting to be part of a particular bloc. We love our strategic autonomy, and I'm sure we'll continue to go along that path. So as far as geopolitics is concerned, there are certain advantages in the SCO. The SCO Development Bank, let's see how it comes up, and then let's see as to how that goes further. Because both NDB, the New Development Bank, and the AIB have been functioning really well. In fact, they have been given a run for money for the World Bank and the IMF, and ADB for that matter. Most of the applications now go to these banks than going to ADB and other banks because of the kind of restrictions and other things that they put. So the NDB and AIB has been a success story. And if we follow the same path, then SCO Bank also can be a success story. So that is one. All this is actually looking at a kind of a de-dollarization, which is not spelled out anywhere. But if these countries start actually dealing within their own currencies, of course, they'll start moving away from the dollar bit by bit. So that is an aspect I think we need to keep in mind. And addition to that, the stable border, what you talked about, you're very right. There have been tremendous amount of infrastructure improvement by the Chinese. in terms of roads, in terms of railway lines. They're now trying to construct a railway line from Xinjiang to Tibet. And they're also bringing a road closer called G695 all along the line of actual control, starting from Arunachal Pradesh, going right up to Xinjiang. And in addition, there have been a lot of feeder roads that have come up. And in addition, you have got airfields which have been strengthened. You have got heliports and helipads that have come up all over the place. So these are all and habitat. I mean, to billet the troops, the number of accommodation has come up and permanent deployment of troops have increased. So all this is going to pose an impediment for the discussions on the de-escalation. The de-escalation, of course, found a mention in the foreign ministers' meeting, which the Indian readout said that. But notwithstanding that, this is going to be a difficult process. Ambassador Khan mentioned about the distances, the high altitudes, etc., infrastructure, etc. I think this de-escalation is going to be a difficult process. I think it is going to take a lot of effort and time on this. I'll mention 3 more points before arms delivery to Pakistan. You mentioned. I think arms delivery was a very, very mundane kind of a point. Arms delivery has been happening for decades between China and Pakistan. What is actually new? I won't say it is new. It is new for probably the civilians who listen to this. But when you talked of China-Pakistan collusivity, what exactly a professional would expect is what the deputy chief mentioned in the FICCI, the kind of transferring of the ISR data, transferring of targeting data. All these things were expected as a professional soldier. There's nothing new in that particular thing, and in future also that is going to happen. We need to work on that premise that such cooperation will happen even in any kind of future conflict between India and Pakistan. Let's make no mistake. In fact, in all our interactions with the Chinese, after listening to all our complaints about Pakistan, they'll say, we understand all your points, but we'll still continue to help Pakistan. That is the statement that we used to get. And last 2 points, the prism of the third, seeing the bilateral relation between India and China from the prism of third party, this has been a permanent issue for a very number of years. We have been telling them, please don't do this. India-China relationship is bilateral and you should see it like that, and don't see it from the prism of India-US relations or US-China relations. But somehow or the other, the sensitivity to that India-US relationship has always been there in our discussions. So this is something which they'll continue to monitor and continue to mention to us. The trade deficit, which is going to happen, I was reading yesterday, day before, there is a factory which was started in Nalagarh in Himachal Pradesh, which has started producing APIs. So this is going to reduce our dependence on China considerably as the time goes by. So there are a number of issues that have been happening. I think I'll stop here and then leave it for the part of the discussion subsequently.
So if you all 3 permit, can we take few questions of audience? Okay. Mr. Akash Sadani wants to know, in recent times, we have often heard that USA is not an enemy and China is not a friend. What exactly does this mean? Is it a lack of defining our friends and enemies or something else? Any one of you can take this.
I think let Mr. Kant come on this, and then I can add up. And then Professor Kant can go on.
You need to unmute your mic. Ambassador Khan, you need to unmute.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yes.
I don't want to go into characterization of China as an enemy or someone else as friend. We look at their behavior, we look at their strategic posture, we look at to what extent they are supportive of our interests, our aspiration, to what extent they're mindful of our concerns. So we go by that. Now, China clearly falls in a different category compared to USA. For a variety of reasons that we already discussed. Narasimhan talked about what Chinese are doing along India-China borders in our economic engagement. We discussed about China's support to Pakistan. General Narasimhan mentioned that it was expected, but something which may not have surprised us doesn't mean it becomes any less significant. if you compare China's battlefield behavior or collusion with Pakistan this time during the 4-day conflict, it was qualitatively very different from a stance they had taken during earlier India-Pakistan conflict. Kind of operational collaboration they were extending, and this is, he rightly pointed out, this will happen. In fact, this will happen in a much bigger manner down the road. We'll have to factor that in our defense planning and strategy. So China, bottom line is that we are not confident. China is supportive of rise of India. In fact, very often it tries to sort of come in the way, even in our pursuing our legitimate interests in our neighborhood, whether in South Asia or even in the Indo-Ocean region. Coming to USA, we have at present uh, negative signals coming from Washington, D.C. But by and large, we have seen India-US relations being on a positive trajectory in so many areas. It has been a constructive partnership with the serious, strategic dimensions, whether it's the area of defense and security collaboration, sometimes intelligence sharing, or economic partnership, people-to-people contacts. So there has been a much higher level of comfort in that relationship. Though, of course, we have faced a really turbulent phase of late in second Trump administration. We'll see how things evolve down the road. But my own feeling is that, notwithstanding these difficulties, the government of India is trying to conserve and preserve India's strategic partnership with USA. And in many areas, our exchanges are still going ahead, notwithstanding comments made by President Trump or some of his key advisors, notwithstanding 50% tariff which has been imposed, kind of support they have given to Pakistan. So let's see how it develops. We are not, as I mentioned earlier, we are not looking at China as a sort of compensation to offset our difficulties with USA. So two relationships we would like, they influence each other, no doubt about it. But we would not like to sort of look at China through prism of USA, or look at USA through prism of our relations with China. No, we need to maintain a degree of strategic clarity in this regard, as an important component of our overall, you know, policy of strategic autonomy.
Absolutely, I agree. Jalal Narasimhan, you also wanted to comment something?
Yeah, well, only two things on this. See, the point I think we need to keep in mind as far as the first question that came up is, we have been saying that there are no permanent enemies or friends in international relations. But of late, there's another thing that is coming up. There's also no permanent interests. Interests also keep changing. So if you look at that, these statements keep coming and going. But our relationships need to be maintained on a stable platform. That is the only point I wanted to mention.
Professor Kondapalli, before you answer that question, there's another question, if you can look into it. It is by Shritik Kothari. He says that Mr. C. Rajamohan recently, today, I think in the paper in Indian Express,
Today.
that PM's decision to skip the parade was a bad one. It proves the Eurasian alliance as a weak stance, as India has kept this thing, doors open for the West. Views on this? I feel it was a right decision, but what are your views?
First, on the first question, when a nation decides about enemies or friends, the parameter is who is supporting my sovereignty and territorial integrity, who is opposing my sovereignty and territorial integrity, in what way X is important for my national interests, will serve my national interests. So based on that, generally we have these enemies or friends that are calculated. So from that point of view, India has a sovereignty and territorial integrity issue with China. We just saw 20 Indian soldiers being killed in Galwan, and the on the other hand, United States State Department in 1962 recognized NIFA, Northeast Frontier Agency, as part of India. Uh, United States has not recognized the western sector of the border as part of India. So there is an issue there in terms of the sovereignty and territorial integrity with the United States. But the crucial thing is, while China wants to take Indian land, United States has not so far claimed any Indian land. So from that point of view, United States is not an enemy from the sovereignty territorial integrity, but it could be an adversary in terms of the strategic autonomy related. When we last 4 or 5 decades, we have this problem with United States on that. A sovereign independent decision, United States may block in that, and we saw that in many, and including in the last few days on the tariff-related issue and attendant Russian oil and Russian military equipment. So there is that. It's a little bit complicated, but the prism through which we see is whether my sovereignty, territorial integrity is affected. Who is affecting this? Obviously, there are adversaries or even enemies. The Chinese divide in their assessments, internal and open assessments, United States as the enemy, even though today they have a G2 that is emerging on the tariffs issue and others. They consider Japan also as the second adversary, and today they conducted a military parade basically against Japan. So this is so second is Japan. Third, they consider Philippines, Vietnam, and other South China Sea contestants as an adversary or even an enemy. But with Vietnam, they have slightly reduced the enmity, and because of the two communist parties coming together. But interestingly, in the SEO summit, the meeting and President Xi Jinping's meeting with the Vietnamese leader, there is a mention of a little bit of frustration from the point of view of China to Vietnam on investments and others. Carefully, if you look at that, it is clear from that perspective. The fourth, the Chinese consider India as an adversary. One, of course, on the Tibet issue, on the issues related to the sovereignty and territorial integrity, especially the unresolved border. One Chengdu military region commander long ago, 2 decades ago, even considered that this is the trigger for the local war under modern conditions, the unresolved territorial dispute. So so 4 levels of threats that the Chinese consider: United States, Japan, Vietnam / Philippines, and India. So that is enemy friend related answer. On the second, on the military parade, the military parade is basically to showcase the Chinese military equipment and power. This is part of the Fanfa Your Way, or accomplish something, that Xi Jinping mentioned. And they are displaying these also to as a part of the coercive diplomatic pressure on other countries. Even though in the speech, President Xi mentioned that they are peace-loving, etc., etc. Nevertheless, the parade is generally the Chinese don't conduct military parades like we conduct military parades in the Rajpath, now renamed as Kartavya Path. Every Republic Day we have this, but China never conducts like this. They altogether have 16 or 17 in the last 8 decades. So it indicates that there is a signaling that China has with this military parade. One is on Japan, second is on the United States, because the Hungchi 29 is something like the third system of the US, and other military equipment that they displayed in Beijing today morning. They all indicate to the upcoming uh, problems between US and China. So there is a very clear signaling here, both to Japan and the United States. So in that context, India joining and supporting China and its objectives would be a problematic. Nevertheless, General VK Singh attended the previous 2015 parade in Beijing, and we also sent some troops to the parade. It was also against Japan at the time, but not these many spectacular weapons were displayed during this time. So just to sum up, current military parade would be difficult for the Indian Prime Minister to visit. In any case, back home, he has to meet the Singapore Prime Minister and other
Yes.
scheduling issues.
Yes, the things are scheduled. There is one future DG artillery. He's asking our posture. The Chinese also criticize us. The West also criticizes us. So, does this balancing act means win for a foreign policy? And Mr. Kantha, would you like to take it?
I will not call it a balancing act as such. We have always maintained strategic autonomy. Uh, we have not allowed any country to have a veto on our relations with a third country. Uh, Today, the fact that we are taking forceful positions on certain demands made by USA, that shows our strategic autonomy. Clearly, it's very difficult to argue that India has ever been a US stooge. That might be propaganda in certain circles, but it's not backed up by facts. Likewise, you know, complaints emanating in some quarters in uh, in USA or Europe about India's engagement with China or Russia. It really smacks of double standards. By no means, it amounts to trying to play all sides. In our foreign policy, we maintain independence of decision making, autonomy of decision making, and we promote our interests. We take a position on issues uh, on basis of merits, on basis of appraisal of how a particular decision will impact us. For instance, purchase of oil from Russia. Today, Americans are complaining. Some European countries are also making noise. But the bottom line is that uh, if we had not purchased oil from Russia, uh, they have they would have been mayhem in the global oil market. In fact, we were encouraged to buy oil from Russia, and we are not the largest purchaser of Russian oil even today. China buys much more from Russia than we do, both oil and gas. Uh, European countries are largest purchaser of LNG from Russia. Uh, they don't mind buying finished products, the petroleum products of India after processing Russian oil. So, some of these concerns are contrived. They are deliberate tactics on us, and we have not allowed ourselves to act on the duress. So, Prime Minister being in Tianjin, he's engaging in kind of dialogue he had with President Putin. Are pursuing a kind of relationship with China. This is part of that policy, and and we are not apologetic about it. It's not something new. It has been very consistent, and I believe it's the right stance to take.
I think we'll take just last two questions and then your last comments from all of you. One is the US has shown immense displeasure at the India-China-Russia posturing at SCO. If we are trying to salvage the US relationship, how does this help? And this was by Lakshay. And another one is by what is the biggest caveat when it comes to dealing with China? Is it just the possibility of being backstabbed by them at any point, or the fact that they openly aid our country? So both these questions, this is by Sam Keating. And your last comments. We can start with Professor Kondapalli and then Jalna and Ambassador Kantha.
Thank you very much. I think history should be a guide in seeing whether who is a stooge of the United States. In 1971, Henry Kissinger visited China, and the US had sent 2 aircraft carriers to the Bay of Bengal to counter the Bangladesh Liberation War. And the Chinese and the Americans acted together in this context. In the Security Council, the Chinese blocked the Bangladeshi membership, although the reason was a different one on the POW issue, but they blocked the Bangladesh membership in 1974 till 1974. So US and China were acting together. So you could understand who is a stooge of who. And subsequently, the United States gave a lot of military assistance to China, $450 million of American upgradation of the avionics and others for the J-7 aircraft and other. The former US Defense Secretary opened a shop in Beijing and they tried to sell arms to the Chinese during the 1980s. It was shut down due to the Tiananmen Square incident. But there was the American actual arms transfer to China. Fourth is during the Pokhran tests, the nuclear tests, United States and China passed the 1172 resolution in the Security Council. So you can understand once again who is a stooge of whom. Fourthly, the Obama administration considered China as part of the G2. And there were a lot of efforts jointly by China and the United States. So these examples suggest that the Chinese vernacular press or other statements are basically propaganda. They try to do this to counter others. So I just stop here.
General Narasimhan.
I've got just 2 points. One is on that SCO, that meeting. If you want to improve relationship with the US, what do you do? See, the thing that we need to keep in mind is we have to look at our interests. And that is the basic thing that guides us. So that is what we call by strategic autonomy. And we're not joining into any block or something, as I explained to you earlier. So we are not actually we're not actually closing the doors on anybody. Also not actually joining any one particular side so the other particular side might approach with the relationship. That is one. The second thing is the last question. What is the last question that you had? Sam Keating's one? I can't read it from here. Yeah. Yeah, the biggest caveat is simple. We have been saying, both the foreign minister has been saying with Wang Yi and the prime minister also said it with Mr. Xi Jinping. The caveat is simple. We need to go on the 3 mutuals. So the 3 mutuals has been projected commonly by both foreign minister and the prime minister with the Chinese. Mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutual interest. So if that is a caveat on which I think we need to move this relationship forward. So my last point on this is we should not get ahead of ourselves as far as ACO is concerned, and also the India-China relationship is concerned, thinking that everything will become hunky-dory tomorrow. It is not going to happen in that manner. We are going to be cautious. We are going to take step-by-step approach, and that is the way I think we need to see both these relationships.
Absolutely. Ambassador Kant, your last comments? You need to unmute your mic.
I'll make two brief points. One that when it comes to SEO, it remains a limited organization. Uh, we have certain equity and interest in SEO, which we are pursuing. But this is not going to become a sort of geopolitical grouping or a bloc. There are too many contradictions within the group. There is no convergent strategic agenda. That's one. Secondly, a broader point that today we are in midst of an exceptionally uncertain, unpredictable global environment. In this environment, we must have a strategic clarity on how we assess developments and also how do we engage with countries in a manner where there is a degree of stability in our posture. We exercise, strategic patience. We can't have knee-jerk reactions just because we are facing certain, problems with USA. We need to change our strategic stance. No, I think we need to work on those problems. See, we can get over the present rough patch in relations, though there's no doubt about the fact that US behavior has left a lasting impact on our assessment of USA as a reliable partner. And final, I think along with strategic clarity, strategic patience, the overall compass has to be strategic autonomy. This is one area where we decide what is good for us. No other country has a veto on our actions. We are a large country. We are a country with the requisite staying power, with requisite bandwidth. We should not be swayed from one position to another. I believe we'll maintain that kind of perseverance, stability, autonomy in our policy.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank especially all our panelists for taking time out and coming to this podcast and discussing such an important issue of India-China relation in this changing geopolitical milieu and SEO. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank all our viewers. There were so many questions. I could not take all of them because of the time constraint. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Roshan. Yeah.